Kia ora koutou, I am Tania Bramley from New Zealand Landcare Trust. I am the Manawatu Whanganui Region Coordinator. I just wanted to thank everyone so much for coming and being so enthusiastic today. It's great to hear all the networking already going on. Really amazing turnout today. We have Right Honourable Simon Upton and his team of advisors, Jeff Simmons and Nora Linari, who most of you will know have been doing a little bit of a roadshow around the area, speaking to catchment groups to find out what's happening on the ground. So thank you very much for travelling and being part of the forum today. I'd like to acknowledge MFE, who fund my role and also the Aotearoa Catchment Extension project, which helped to provide training to coordinators from 4 of the catchment collectives that are here today. And it's also been a real pleasure pulling together a community of practice of sort of catchment coordinators from the lower North Island who get together and share ideas and how we can support each other, sometimes emotionally, with the different challenges of working with catchment groups and supporting them. We have a great contingent of farming leaders here, representing 24 catchment groups, as well as committee members and coordinators from 6 catchment collectives across the lower North Island. We will start the day with presentations from 5 of these collectives, sharing how they are supporting resilient farm businesses and connected rural communities, and while striving to improve the health of land and waterways.
Everybody, catchment groups know that we love a good story to help establish who we are and where we are, so I'm going to take you on our story. I'll use some words from our chairperson, Donna Cram, as to why the Taranaki catchment community was formed. Her words were, the reason for creating this was a vision born from listening to challenges within our own region through dairy environment leaders. It was also a response to new incoming regulations relating to fresh water and greenhouse gases. Many consider these regulations a threat. However, I believe that we can farm in harmony with the environment. A big, bold statement, and I believe we've certainly backed it up with our actions. To date, we have now extended that to 15 catchment groups. You can see from the map here, we've got a fairly good coverage around the maunga. So we continued our work around educating farmers and engaging them in practices that protect water quality and our freshwater farm systems. With our LiDAR mapping, we've produced over 3,000 farm maps to date around Taranaki. And so our farmers for free are able to access this as a resource to be part of their farm planning. We've started the Drains and Streams project, so just helping farmers understand the importance that riparian planting and fencing around streams is just as critical as actually a stream, around drains, is just around that. So it gave us that opportunity to carry on doing that good mahi. We were also successful in obtaining funding under the MPI Integrated Farm Plan Accelerator Fund. So for the next 3 years, we were able to help educate farmers around what integrated farm planning was. At our core is we've created an online website, goodfarm.nz, which is a resource hub. So any information you need to know, regulations around any of the modules, animal welfare, intensive winter grazing, biodiversity, biosecurity, people, all that information is available for you for free on this website. So we've got templates, so if you want to put a farm plan together, all that information is there for you. Collaboration, that's a word I've been using a couple of times. This is where our strength has really started to shine over the years. We've been working alongside Regional Council. We're trying to make sure that every workshop that we hold, we have the right person from the Regional Council there as well, to help farmers be able to ask the questions and get the answers they need, certainly around like consenting or anything regulatory that they have questions on, making sure that we are saying the right things and making sure that the farmers get the right information. We also recognise the value of Mātauranga Māori, and part of our work going forward is to help strengthen the partnerships in that space. We're all in the same boat with those short project funding deadlines. I mentioned it before. A year, you're only just getting started. 2 years, you're starting to see something happen. 3 years, you're really starting to get some great results. But then your time is diluted because you're then also looking for where's this next round coming from. So it'd be great if we were able to have a situation in place where we didn't have to do that all the time.
Morning, everybody. So, as Tania's already said, this is our vision statement that our committee set early on in the piece. We were only sort of two and a half years into this journey, so we're still fairly new compared to some of the other groups here, but our overarching goal is enhancing rural communities' land and water. So we have a few key drivers that came out of the bottom of our goals. Obviously, building capacity in our rural community is big, and that's not just around fresh water. There's education around freshwater piece in there and building data, but also growing strong communities that are really resilient in those times of struggle. As Paul talked about before, when we have these adverse weather events, having a really strong rural community is so very important. And creating a united community that's on the journey together, whether it be freshwater, biodiversity, whatever that journey is, everyone on the same page working together for a greater good. And the other thing is, although we are farmer-led, we still encourage a really wide section of our community to attend these events. So a lot of our groups will have a really strong hapu representation, and they will also have, there'll be lifestyle block owners, there'll be just, people that own there may be a little town in that area that just live in the town. And then we've managed to set a couple of our groups up, which has been quite exciting, with trap banks, thanks to Horizons Biodiversity grants. We were able to connect our landowners in with Māori tūroa, which was really great and really beneficial for our landowners to have access to some funding to support them in some planting and fencing.
The Rangitikei Rivers Catchment Collective, as you know, was established in 2017 when cases of intensive beef finishing near the Rangitikei River raised environmental concerns and freshwater regulations were being developed. Our goal is to empower and support farmers to connect and share good sustainable farming practices that build resilience and a healthy environment. The Rangitikei Rivers Catchment Collective has grown significantly over the past 8 years. We put this down to our grassroots, farmer-led and bottom-up approach. The map shows the spread of and scale of our members across the Rangitikei, Turakina and Whanganui River catchments. Catchment groups, we have 26 groups that are led by 35 farming chairs. The catchment groups are established around water catchments, community halls and schools. The water samples from each water catchment area are tested against the national policy standards and Horizons 1 plan targets for nitrate, soluble in organic nitrogen, dissolved reactive phosphorus, turbidity and E. coli. And we've also, with the support of the New Zealand Land Care Trust and Tania here, we've done a lot of MCI testing, and Tania helps a lot with the analysis of the water quality results. Once a catchment has collected 3 years of water quality data, we get this analysed independently by Traverse to explain the results and identify any trends or issues that may need addressing or further investigation. RRCC now has a significant data set of over 5 years of water quality results, and our aim is to generate insights from this data to help us to understand the source of contaminants and to drive practical and targeted solutions to protect and improve water quality where possible. In the next few years is to assist with controlling invasive pests such as peafowl, mustelids, cats and rats. The aim of this is to improve farm profitability and to support the return of species such as the whio, the bittern, native bats and brown kiwi. Our other environmental activities include fencing and planting riparian zones to enhance waterways, improving fresh fish passage to support native fish populations, trialling sediment and nitrogen management strategies to reduce erosion and protect water quality. We're supporting by sourcing funds for trials, research, reports and projects. So RRCC has secured funding for catchment projects, research, cultural value reports and other initiatives that remove barriers to progress, support farmers with changing regulatory environment.
The Manawatu River Catchment Collective is pivotal in addressing the challenges of catchment management. Our presentation wants to highlight our commitment to collaboration and knowledge sharing. By bringing together diverse stakeholders, we aim to shape the future of catchment management through informed discussions and innovative solutions. It's essential to recognise the collective effort required to tackle these challenges effectively, ensuring sustainable practices that benefit both the environment and the community. Just looking at our key catchment metrics, we encompass an area of around 600,000 hectares and showcasing diverse land use across 16 established sub-catchments. Currently, we've got 256,000 hectares actively monitored. Our MRC focus areas. Science for farmers is really the gem of our collective. We're centred on practical science-based projects that farmers can implement. We investigate critical issues such as spring water anomalies and high nitrate levels, collaborating with organisations like Ag Research and Dairy NZ. And initiatives have included edge-of-field mitigation strategies, sediment traps and assessment of nutrient flow paths. By understanding farmers' perceptions, we believe that this enhances both agricultural and environmental sustainability. And then we're looking at editorial, focus on building editor relationships with local papers. I think when you're marketing and telling a story, you need to use a multitude of different marketing and approaches. So we try to utilise, because believe it or not, farmers still read papers, and it's quite important. They certainly like reading local stuff which talks about what is happening in their areas. So people enjoy that. Community catchments' role in New Zealand environmental improvement. We really believe the role of catchment groups is crucial. So we try to focus at MRCC on tangible information to local communities about freshwater quality and the necessity for change. Through our rigorous testing and data collection, we aim to enhance understanding of environmental conditions. Engaging the community is really important in this, reinforcing the idea that meaningful change takes time and collective effort. The strength of well set up groups is that they have an individual voice that represents their specific circumstances. We need a voice. We are all volunteers in this space.
Kia ora, koutou katoa. I'm Kirsty McCarthy. I'm the project lead for the Wairarapa Catchment Collective, and John, he's my wingman, so we're going to tag team today. So as Tania said, we launched just about 12 months ago, June 2024. So it's been a really, really busy year, and we're really proud of where we've got to in that year. The Wairarapa Catchment Collective is the next phase of a previous catchment support project that was funded by MPI. As that project was coming towards its funding conclusion, landowners sort of didn't think it was quite fit for purpose, and so they came together and really created the collective to give them a unified support organisation. The unique thing about our collective is we have extremely strong partnerships with Greater Wellington Regional Council, Mountains to Sea Wellington and MPI on-farm support. At the moment, we're working with 14 active groups across the region, representing about 150,000 hectares. We've got two new emerging groups, Matai Kona and Tuturumuri to the south. And we've got a number, about 5 other areas that we've started conversations with. So the focus this year is really on establishing new groups. One of the constant challenges that I'm sure everyone in the room is aware of is we need to work at the pace of our landowners. Really focused on engagement and building relationships. So we've facilitated more than 60 planning sessions, workshops and monitoring sessions and community events. But also supporting groups to be more effective in their storytelling, making sure that they capture information that demonstrates their impact. So not so much anecdotal, but hard data so that we can help them tell those stories. So next thing, monitoring and research. So that's around building capability and understanding of the catchment. For example, the Tanui Whariama Pest project that we're working on at the moment, we've just monitored 7,000 hectares using trail cams and show cards with some really interesting results that cats are
feral cats are more dominant than possums in the areas that we monitor.
Kia ora tātou, my name is John Hart. We've talked a lot about partnerships, but this is a really, really big point for us. We believe our single biggest strength as a collective is our partnership model. Each partner brings their unique approach, resources and networks to the table. This image gives you an idea of the breadth of services and projects we might be working on in one catchment. And this example is Te Nui Whareama, our largest group at just over 51,000 hectares. So the little icons will show you there are multiple projects with multiple leads, and that depends on who's best for the job. So all the partners are working towards a common vision for the catchment, created by the group and facilitated by our action planning process.
Kia ora koutou e te whānau. Great to be here. Before I start, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to New Zealand Land Trust, who do an amazing job for such a long time. And if we can put our hands together for the farmers and catchment coordinators, I was just blown away this morning by what you're doing and what you're achieving, sometimes in just such a short time frame. So yeah, thank you. So I think catchment management is action at catchment scale to enable change to a new state. And I can hear a lot of that this morning, whether it's people, social, water quality, a range of things. So maybe that aligns, maybe it doesn't. I think there's two parts of it as well. There's catchment management, which we do most of the time, and then there's integrated catchment management, which we probably should be doing, and it's quite challenging. So integrated catchment management, in my mind, is really seeking an outcome. Integrated catchment management really needs purpose and direction. We need a huge amount of information and data, and I know we'll probably cover some of that in our panel this afternoon. And we need integration between organisations, and it's great to see so many of you talking about that this morning. On the other side of things, this is where I'm going, and where NZARM really heads is around capability building. People, we think people are the most important asset in catchment management or land and water management, and we need a range of skills. So I think on the bottom of that pyramid, we need strategic skills, people skills, which many of you got in abundance by the sound of it, and doing a great job from a partnership point of view. And then we need, technical skills around biodiversity, sort of biophysical, geophysical, cultural, social kind of skills as well, real technical skills. And then, working at place, which is what was really encouraging around the ground up approach. I think you've got to understand the community, the policies in those places, and then we're sort of getting our skill set all together for integrated catchment management. This is a very small catchment, tiny catchment, 6,500 hectares, something like that. So it would be just the corner of one of your farms that you were talking about earlier in like the Rangitikei. But it's a good example, a simple example of an approach around the 80-20 rule. So this is in the central, I suppose, Waikato. It drains straight into, down this little point there, drains straight into the river called the Waipā River, and then that flows into the Waikato River. And the Waikato, of course, has got heaps of stuff going on for it, heaps of funding and investment and multi-generational approaches to restoring it. That bottom image there on the right-hand side is where the Waipā River hits during a flood, hits the Waikato River, and you can see it's just a big conveyor belt of sediment. So really different geology, different approaches there, and this Manawatu catchment is part of that. So they really want to try and improve what they're doing, reduce sediment into the Waipā and then the Waikato. Now this catchment is quite different, really different for a very small catchment and what the risk profile looks like, particularly from a water quality perspective. So on the left-hand side there, that's a phosphorus risk. So most of the phosphorus is likely, it's been modelled through slope and soil, geology, rainfall, probably some other things that are missing, to understand where the phosphorus kind of risk is coming from. Most of it in this catchment, and these are the extremes, this is a regional model, is coming from the upper catchment. If you look at nitrogen, which is a central one, most of the nitrogen risk is coming from the lower part of the catchment. The upper catchment is pretty much free of risk from a nitrogen point of view. And then erosion and sedimentation is coming from the central part of the catchment, which is where the Manawatu stream flows. So most of it is coming from riverbank erosion in this case. So, no catchment is created equally, so we have to sort of manage it differently as well. There's a real even distribution of regulation across the landscape, but unfortunately there's an uneven distribution of impacts, like particularly for farmers. where I'm getting to is people are super important, and understanding integrated catchment management across all of our sectors, funders, implementers, catchment coordinators, regulators, is probably one of the greatest opportunities we have to make a change in freshwater, land and water, for all the reasons you've heard this morning. Regulation does have an essential place, but it typically misses that catchment context. And I guess the last thing really is catchment management does help you with a high return on investment for communities. It helps you get together as a community, as we've heard, but it helps you focus your effort. Like, it's easy to go down the wrong path, but if you focus on effort, the right place for the right reason, then we should get a huge return on investment.
I felt very at home with that last presentation because I own the second to last gully which enters the Waipā just before Ngārawa here, and I own 90% of a micro catchment, and I own bits of the last gully to enter the Waipā River. Land use change is the norm, not the exception in New Zealand. That is land use change from pre-human times, and that's only 800 or 900 years ago, to pre-European times to 1996. And you can see how the place has changed. Humans have turned a very large amount of indigenous forest, reduced the amount of indigenous forest. And so, big opening up of tussock grassland, and then with the arrival of the Europeans, improved pastures. This is 1996 here, 2018, and there's some big changes going on. The biggest of all is the move to exotic forest, but there's also a big move to high-producing grassland. That's just over 20 years there. Biodiversity, for example, ongoing loss of wetlands. Now, we know from both international and national research that the rough rule of thumb is to aim for 15% of representative ecosystems land cover if you want to maintain your richness of species and your native biodiversity. So to have a chance of making progress in the more challenging catchments, I think we need to do three things. The first is to bring decision-making closer to the people who are having to make significant management changes or even contemplate land use changes. And that is where I think catchment groups come in. I actually have an open mind about the extent to which actual rule-making powers could be delegated to catchment groups. I think it's fine for central government to have the aspirations as to what we want for clean water, and I think it's fine for the regions to then say, okay, what does that mean? How are we what level are we going to be aspiring to? So you can set your target as a political level thing, but then how you get there, the how, I think that should be led and driven by landowners, local communities and mana whenua. And I believe it's important that participation in catchment groups is broad. While they're most likely to be driven by farmers, other community members in the catchment also impact on the natural environment and are affected by it. So it makes sense to offer incentives only to those who are willing to work collectively and focus the regulatory attention on those unwilling to take part in collaborative processes. So it's the old carrot and stick. We need to be upfront about the potential cost of making changes and who is going to have to pay. We need a coherent and equitable basis for deciding who that is. If no one will pay, the environment will pay. We do know that. What costs should lie with landowners? How much public subsidy should be available to facilitate changes in land use and land management? How should that public subsidy be funded? Most people in a corner, and most politicians, I suspect, in a room with an angry crowd, will find that public subsidy is the easiest way of calming people down. It's the easiest route, spend somebody else's money, but it is also eye-wateringly expensive. Let me remind you, it cost $80 million of public money to purchase a 20% reduction in the flow of nutrient into Lake Taupo. Taupo's legendary status with boaties, fishermen, and batch owners in places like Kinloch provided it with plenty of urban supporters for such spend-up. it is unlikely to be repeated in anonymous reaches of rural New Zealand where there are no tourist attractions. Other financing solutions need to be explored.
Ngā mana, ngā reo rauranga tirama, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. This is your opportunity to ask questions.
So my question for the panellists is, how can catchment groups build trust beyond their own groups? So how do they build trust with the wider sort of community and sort of wider society as well?
Very good question. Trust is quick to light, slow to light and quick to burn. That's often what happens in the rural community. It takes time to build. If you want to get people engaged outside of a kind of catchment group, you've got to ask what was the group designed to do. But I think that's at the heart of building trust. You said you were going to do something, you've done it, and what was the result?
Very briefly, it's the word modelling. Farmers have lost trust with it, and we're talking, it's been raised by 3 speakers, that word modelling. And that's why catchment groups are doing water testing, because they don't trust the modelling that tells them that they're polluting. And so that's something the science world needs to be well aware of, and it's something the governance needs to be well aware of, is modelling is an overused word, and it's an overused tool. And that's why there's so much water testing being done, because it's true science.
And I think, as Simon mentioned, I think the use of modelling for, it's not the problem isn't the use of modelling. Modelling is a useful tool, but the use of it for regulation is what has really caused that problem.
Kia ora, Tom here. I'm have also done various things in the freshwater space for a while. We've talked a lot about farmers in these catchment collectives, and then just moved to the idea of widening that to landowners. What about in these large catchments where we also have other communities? The Manawatu catchment has several towns and cities down its entire length where there are renters and students and all sorts of people interacting with those catchments who might want to have a say over what is happening in those catchments and the quality of the water coming down to them. But at several points we've also talked today about moving at the pace of the landowner. What happens where the communities in those catchments that aren't landowners or farmers, what happens when they want things to move faster? Where do they kind of fit into this catchment collective conversation?
Yep, really good question. Pleased you raised it. Because part of the reason we have catchment groups is because of all the pressure we've had across the country from regulation and political pressure, basically. So catchment groups were formed to help get together and actually tell our story, and there was a whole lot of presentations this morning about people telling our story. And so we need the people you're talking about to tell our story. So they need to be involved in the catchment groups, and they also need to be part of the community which sets the standards as to what we want in our catchments. So they definitely need to be involved, and whether it's anglers, tourism, whoever it may be, they're definitely welcome in most 90% of catchment group meetings. Obviously the farmers are the ones that are directly responsible because they're the ones that are managing the sides of the streams and things. But for a catchment group and to implement what Simon is talking about of having bottoms-up, community-based direction, it's got to have community input, not just the landowners.
And please, let's keep this conversation going. I mean, I think we are at a moment now, as everyone has said, where there's a lot of opportunity. There's reform going on of RMA and national policy statements. So it's the time to be having these conversations with your elected representatives, with everyone that you know, to be talking about this sort of stuff. It's great.